So I'm picking up for where I left off. I had just showed you how to use the pen tool, also going over how to use the selection arrow and the direct selection arrow to manipulate the actual curves and paths that you're making. I'm going to go through a couple other tools right now that you can also use. One of them is going to be your pencil tool. And how do you get to the pencil tool? The shortcut for the pencil tool is the letter N on your keyboard. So if you can't find it on your toolbar, it's hidden somewhere, just press the letter N and that'll automatically switch to your pencil tool. When you're working with your pencil tool, just like we were before, I kind of messed around with Illustrator earlier today. I always want to make sure that I just have my stroke black, and I want to make sure there's no fill right now, so I'll just hit that little slash down there. And when I work with the pencil tool, it's a little tricky, but when you click, you can click and drag and like draw a line. When you let go, Illustrator is going to use your scribble as a reference to create that path and the curves that go along with it. So, you know, if I'm drawing like over here, I can literally kind of like freehand it with the little pencil tool and try to trace and follow. And what you'll see is that Illustrator itself tries to simplify that. Now, I find this one actually a little tricky because I usually feel like I have to come in afterwards and do a lot of like fixing and like kind of arranging and rearranging. But sometimes it's kind of good just to kind of get the basic line out there, and then you can kind of go in with your white arrow and kind of adjust things and fix them as necessary. The pencil tool does try to simplify it down a little bit in terms of it only adds the sort of minimum necessary anchor points. But as you can see, even the minimum on a curvy line like this is a lot. So, you know, sometimes when you're adjusting and changing, you might find, well, you know what? It's actually got one more point than I really want or need. And that's kind of making it hard for me to fix. So there are things we can do about that. We can actually go to our pen tool, okay? And if we go right onto our pen tool, I want you to notice, like the pen tool right now has that little sign of asterisk next to it. But when I go right onto an old anchor point that's already on a path, you can see it actually creates this little like minus sign, okay? When that minus sign is there, that means I can literally delete an anchor point. And if you notice, when I delete an anchor point, it just kind of like goes from that, simplifies down what I have over here. And if you use the pencil, I mean, it's all a matter of how you like to work. If you like to work a little bit more precise and have really control over all your anchors, well, use the pen tool. But sometimes if you want to kind of do a really sort of amorphous form that isn't really, you know, it's kind of scribbly and everything, you might want to try the pencil tool instead of the pen and kind of scribble that on there. And then if you feel like, okay, I've got way too many curves and lines and anchor points here, we can go back to the pen tool and literally use it to eliminate actual anchor points. And I do that by just clicking back on the original anchor point. And if I want to kind of adjust things, I'll grab my white arrow, and then that I can do my adjustments as necessary. Oops. All right. And what I generally find is less is more. If you can do something with an anchor point and you can do it exactly the way you want it to look, and it looks good with like 3 anchor points, it might not need 4 or 5. If you have it with 4 or 5 and some of them are getting in the way, I mean, less is usually more. But again, it all depends on how complicated a form you're trying to make. So that's a little bit of the pencil tool. Then I've got some big shapes. So like the head of this character over here is a circle. And making a circle, I can kind of scribble it. I can try to do it with the pen, which might be a little tricky, but there are shape tools. And where are they? So the default one is the rectangle tool, which is the shortcut for that one is the letter M. And if you have the rectangle tool, you can just kind of click and drag and make one. When you make it, it's already selected, so you can actually go to the corners here and kind of like reform it and reshape it. You can even go ahead and kind of like rotate it. And it even gives you kind of these little circles in the corners, but you can literally grab and round things off. Now, when you see when I grab that circle, it kind of takes all the circles in the corners in this actual shape and rounds them all off. But let's just say I wanted to do one and leave the rest the same. I can literally go to my white direct selection arrow, and I can click, and click on the one. You see how like when I clicked on it a second time right now, there's like a little curve next to that arrow. But when I click, then I have the curve and a little dot. That means now I have control of just that one sort of point, and now I can kind of mess around with it. But that's the rectangle, and I need a circle. So underneath the rectangle tool, you'll find there's an ellipse tool. The shortcut for the ellipse tool is the letter L. Whoops. When I hit L, I'll get the ellipse tool, and that'll help me make a oval. Okay. If I want to make a perfect circle while I'm dragging and making my oval, I can hold down Shift, and that'll make a perfect circle. And when I make it, to move it, I'm going to want to grab my black arrow here. I'm going to move it around, kind of adjust it. And that's if I want the absolute perfect circle. If I want an oval, I can do the same thing and just kind of drag it to how I need it, where it needs to fit. Now, there are other shapes in there besides the oval and the rectangle. There's also a rounded rectangle tool, which automatically gives it corners. I don't know that I find this any more or less helpful than just the regular rectangle tool. Why do they have it? It seems a little redundant. Well, one of the good things about Adobe Illustrator is that over the 20 years or so that it's existed, every time there's been an update, they add something new, a new, better tool, and they also keep the old version of it well. So that might be why you see some things are a little redundant at times. For me, for my money, you can't know all of them, but you know, some work better for you than others, and you can experiment. Then you got a star tool, which you can actually just make an actual star, 5-pointed star. There's a polygon tool, which will make like a hex kind of symbol. And you can play around with those. So that's the pencil tool, and those are the shape tools. And again, we can always create the shapes, and later on I'll show you how to fill them in and add color. But hope that's helpful.